What if a little girl spent her birthday alone in a cold, forgotten shed, lighting a single candle, whispering a wish no one else would hear? What if her father, a powerful millionaire, was too busy hosting a party to realize his daughter had vanished into the rain? This is not just a story, this is a moment that changes everything. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, like the video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The Grayson estate stood quiet, wrapped in thick clouds and the early breath of spring rain. The gravel driveway was still wet from the morning drizzle, and the tall windows reflected nothing but the gray sky. It looked like a picture from a magazine, perfect and polished, but inside, it felt like a museum. Everything was still, too still. Nathan Grayson stepped out of his black car, adjusting the sleeves of his coat. His shoes clicked across the stone path as the driver shut the door behind him. The housekeeper greeted him at the front door with a polite nod. "Welcome home, Mr. Grayson," she said softly, responded with a faint smile and a distracted, "Thank you," already moving toward the wide staircase that led to his office. The house didn't welcome him. It never did, not since Evelyn died. Upstairs, in a small pink bedroom with flower stickers on the window frame, a little girl sat cross-legged on the floor. Lila Grayson, 9 years old, pressed the ears of a small stuffed rabbit against her cheeks it had once belonged to her mother. The fur was worn thin. It was the only thing that still smelled like Evelyn. She'd been waiting since the sun came up. Today was her birthday. Down the hallway, Jillian Grayson stood in the guest lounge, speaking quickly into her phone. Her voice was smooth, confident, but her eyes were cold. "Yes, the event is still on," she said. "Everything is in place. We'll have the investors in the drawing room by 7. She didn't even look in the direction of the child's room. When Evelyn was alive, the house felt warm. There had been music playing in the mornings, pancakes with blueberries, and stories read under the blankets at night. There was only silence. A clean, perfect silence that Jillian liked to keep tightly controlled. Jillian had entered there, lived 6 months after Evelyn passed. She had sharp heels and perfect hair, and she smiled only when she had to. Nathan met her at one of his hotel openings. He thought she understood pain. She had said all the right things at the right times. She told him he deserved to smile again. He believed her. Now he lived behind locked office doors and long business calls. His work was full of urgent things. Meetings, reports, emails that never ended. He thought providing the best schools, the safest home, and new clothes meant he was doing enough. But Lila wasn't looking for safety. She was looking for someone to see her. Clara, the housekeeper, saw her. She noticed how Lila always looked down when Jillian entered a room, how she barely ate her food when Nathan wasn't home, how her shoulders tensed when footsteps approached. Clara wanted to say something, but she wasn't sure who would listen. In the dining room, the long table was already being set. Silverware polished, plates laid out, candles and tall holders. Jillian walked past the butler and adjusted the centerpieces. "Roses," she said, "only white, and keep the lights dim. Makes people feel richer." Her voice was soft, but there was steel beneath it. Meanwhile, Lila sat on her bed with a small notebook in her lap. She opened it carefully, revealing a page where she had drawn herself holding her mother's hand in a garden. The sun was big and yellow, the flowers bright red. Evelyn had a smile on her face. Lila traced the lines with her finger and whispered, "Happy birthday to me." Nathan finally emerged from his office just before dinner. His phone buzzed in his hand and he answered it without looking up. "Yes, I just got in. I'll be ready for the presentation. Tell Daniel to push the speech to 7:45. As he passed the hallway to Lila's room, didn't notice the light under her door. He didn't knock. Lila waited quietly. The sun dipped behind the clouds. She heard laughter from downstairs. The clinking of glass, the rustle of expensive fabric. The party was starting. She stood, walked to her closet, and reached for her sweater. It was thin, but warm. She tucked her stuffed rabbit under her arm and picked up something small from her desk. Drawer a candle. It was old, left over from a holiday months ago. She had hidden it just in case. Quietly, she slipped out of her room, down the back stairs, and out into the garden. The rain had returned, light and steady, soaking her hair and sweater. She didn't stop, moved through the hedges past the fountain to the small wooden shed at the edge of the yard. No one ever went there anymore. It was where her mother used to keep her gardening tools, inside the shed. It was dark and smelled of damp earth. Lila sat on an old crate and placed the candle in front of her. From her pocket, she pulled out a piece of bread she had saved from breakfast. She set it down like a cake. Her hands trembled as she struck a match. The flame flickered and caught the candle's wick. Soft glow filled the small space. She looked at it for a long time, her rabbit clutched tightly in her lap. Then she whispered, "Make a wish, Lila." And in the stillness of the shed, as rain tapped softly on the roof, she closed her eyes and made one. The candle flickered softly, casting tiny shadows on the wooden walls of the old garden shed. Lila sat cross-legged on the crate, her rabbit tucked under her arm, the piece of bread resting beside the glowing flame. Outside, the rain fell steady, soaking the leaves and tapping gently on the tin roof. She hugged her knees to her chest. The candle was small, but it gave her comfort. The flame reminded her of her mother. It was warm, soft, and quiet, just like Evelyn used to be in her mind. She could almost hear her mother's voice. She imagined Evelyn singing her birthday song in that calm voice that always made Lila feel safe. She imagined the smell of cinnamon rolls, the sound of laughter, the feeling of being held tightly in warm arms. But those were only memories now. No one sang today. No one remembered. In the big house, music played from the speakers in the dining room. Laughter echoed through the halls. Glasses clinked, and the fire crackled in the fireplace. Guests filled the space, dressed in dark suits and shiny dresses. Everything looked perfect at least on the outside. Jillian smiled at each guest, offering them drinks and short, sweet compliments. She moved from person to person, like a hostess in a grand show. Behind her eyes, though, there was calculation. Every movement was planned, every word carefully chosen. This party wasn't just about business, it was about power. Nathan stood by the window in his study, sipping from a glass of wine. He watched the rain trail down the glass, thin lines running into one another and disappearing. His mind was somewhere far away, lost in thoughts he couldn't name. If something tugged at him, a strange unease he couldn't shake. He turned away from the window and picked up a photo from his desk. It showed Evelyn smiling in the garden, holding baby Lila in her arms. Their faces were filled with joy. Nathan traced the edge of the frame with his thumb. He missed that joy. He missed her. But he had buried all that under meetings and schedules. Believing it was easier to keep moving forward, downstairs, Clara moved through the kitchen, wiping down counters and placing more food on trays. She glanced toward the hallway and paused. Something was off. She hadn't seen Lila all afternoon. Usually the girl would sit near the kitchen, doodling quietly or sneaking pieces of fruit when she thought no one noticed. But today nothing. She considered asking Jillian, but the coldness in Jillian's eyes always made her feel small. Instead, she gently nudged one of the other staff members. "Have you seen Lila?" she asked in a whisper. The young maid shook her head. "Not since this morning. Maybe she's in her room." Clara frowned and glanced toward the back window. The rain was falling heavier now. The yard was dark. Something in her chest tightened. Meanwhile, in the shed, Lila drew shapes in the dust on the floor. Stars, hearts, her mother's name. She hummed softly to herself. The warmth of the candle soothed her, but the loneliness clung to her like the dampness in her sweater. She wished she could stay there forever, but the candle was burning lower, and the shadows were growing longer. Inside the house, Nathan walked down the hallway toward Lila's room. Something had finally pushed him to check on her. Maybe it was the photo. Maybe it was Evelyn's voice in his memory. Maybe it was guilt. He knocked lightly on the door, then opened it. The room was empty. The bed was made. The rabbit was missing. Panic began to creep in. He checked the closet, the bathroom, the hallway. He asked a staff member if they had seen her. No one had. Walked faster now, moving from room to room, calling her name. Still nothing. Check the garden, Clara said quickly, stepping beside him. She used to go there with Evelyn. Nathan froze. The garden, of course. His heart pounded as he grabbed an umbrella and stepped out into the rain. The wind had picked up. His shoes sank slightly into the wet grass as he crossed the yard. Then he saw it. A tiny glow. It's barely visible through the cracked door of the shed. He rushed toward it, opening the door slowly. There she was, curled on the crate, her rabbit in her arms, her eyes half closed, the candle still burning beside her. "Lila," he breathed, his voice soft and broken. She looked up startled, her face pale and damp. She blinked a few times, unsure if he was real. "Daddy," he nodded, kneeling beside her. "I'm here," he whispered. Without thinking, she leaned forward, pressing her face into his chest. Her small body shook with quiet sobs. Nathan wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly. He felt the cold in her skin, the sadness in her breath, and something in him cracked wide open. The candle flickered one last time, then went out. But in that moment, inside the dark shed with rain tapping above them, something else had been lit, something warmer, something lasting. Nathan picked her up gently, holding her close, whispering, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And, for the first time in a long time, Lila believed he meant it. The morning after the storm was quiet. The rain had passed, leaving puddles on the stone paths and damp petals scattered across the garden. Inside the Grayson estate, the air felt different, still heavy but quieter, as if the house was holding its breath. Lila woke up wrapped in warm blankets, her stuffed rabbit beside her. Her clothes had been changed. The fire in the room crackled softly, and the windows were cracked open just enough to let in the cool breeze. She blinked sleepily, her eyes moving toward the chair beside her bed. Nathan was there. He hadn't gone to his office. He wasn't on the phone. He sat in silence, his head resting in his hand, watching her with tired eyes. "Good morning," he said softly. She didn't answer right away. It was strange to see him there. For so long, he had only existed in passing through quick hugs, polite words, and half smiles. Now he looked like someone trying to remember how to be a father. "Are you... staying?" she asked in a whisper. Nathan sat up straighter. "Yes, I am." Lila's lips trembled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she nodded slowly, then pulled the rabbit closer to her chest. Downstairs, Jillian was in the kitchen, sipping coffee and reading the day's newspaper. Her hands moved quickly, flipping through pages, checking on business updates. She expected Nathan to join her soon, as he always did. But when the clock struck 8 and he didn't appear, she frowned. Clara passed her quietly, placing clean plates on the rack. Jillian glanced up. "Where's Mr. Grayson?" Expression tightened, but she said nothing. Later that day, Nathan sat in his office holding a small envelope. It was addressed in soft handwriting. He had found it in the back of his drawer the night before. It's buried beneath years of unopened letters and forgotten papers. Inside was a short note. "If you ever feel lost, just look at her. She's the piece of me you get to keep. Love her like I would." He closed his eyes, pressing the letter to his chest. For so long he had believed that giving Lila the best home, the best tutors, the best clothes, meant being a good father. But he had missed the most important part, being present. He stood and walked to Lila's room again. She was sitting at her desk, sketching quietly in her notebook. Her fingers moved carefully, drawing a small garden with a tree and 3 figures beneath it: a woman, a man, and a little girl holding both their hands. Nathan sat on the floor beside her. "Can I see what you're drawing?" She looked at him, unsure. Then slowly, she turned the page and held it out. "This is our family," she said quietly, "before." He studied the drawing for a long time. His eyes burned with tears he didn't want to hide. He nodded. "It's beautiful." "Do you miss her?" Lila asked. "Every day," he said. "But I think I forgot how to show it." She nodded too, as if she understood that kind of forgetting. Later that afternoon, Nathan walked through the halls of the house. The staff noticed the change in his pace. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't looking through his phone. He was noticing things: dust on a picture frame, fingerprints on the glass, sound of laughter missing from the halls. When he passed Clara, he paused. "Thank you," he said softly. "For taking care of her?" Clara looked surprised, but she nodded. She just needed someone to notice. He nodded back, feeling the truth of her words settle in his chest. As the sun began to set, Jillian found Nathan in the garden, sitting on a bench with Lila. The two were quiet, watching birds flutter between the trees. "We need to talk," Jillian said, her voice firm. "We will," Nathan replied, standing. "But later." Jillian's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake." "No," he said, turning to her fully. "I've made many, but now I'm trying to make things right." That night, as Lila got ready for bed, Nathan tucked the blankets around her himself. He placed the rabbit beside her pillow and sat beside her as she closed her eyes. "I missed a lot, didn't I?" he asked softly. She nodded, but she reached for his hand. "Can we start over?" she whispered. Double quotes. "Yes," he said. "We can." Outside, the wind rustled the trees, but inside the house, the silence no longer felt so heavy. It felt hopeful. The first steps had been taken. The walls were beginning to crack, letting in the light, and for the first time in a long time, the house felt like it might one day become a home again. The morning sun peeked over the garden wall, casting golden light across the Grayson estate. The air smelled of earth and blooming flowers. Birds chirped softly, and the house, once so full of quiet tension, now felt still in a different way, calm, not cold. Lila opened her eyes slowly. The light through her window painted soft shapes on her wall.
Oh.
She rolled over and saw her stuffed rabbit tucked neatly beside her. The smell of warm toast drifted in from downstairs. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, unsure if she was dreaming. Then she heard its soft humming, not loud, not perfect, but real. She followed the sound to the kitchen, her bare feet brushing the cool floor. There, standing in front of the stove, was Nathan. His sleeves were rolled up, and flour dusted the front of his shirt. Turned when he heard her. "Happy birthday," he said, his voice gentle. Lila blinked. "You remembered?" "Of course," he replied, motioning for her to sit. "I'm not great at pancakes, but I'm trying." On the table, 2 plates sat waiting.
Oh.
One held a stack of pancakes shaped like crooked stars. The other had a single strawberry in the middle. Beside it sat a candle. "I know it's not perfect," he said, lighting the candle, "but I wanted." "You two make your wish here? With me?" Lila sat slowly. Her fingers brushed the edge of the plate. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't want to shed. "Go ahead," he whispered. "Close your eyes." She did. She made her wish in silence. This time, she didn't wish to be seen. She didn't wish to be heard. This time, she simply wished that this feeling would stay. When she opened her eyes, Nathan was watching her with a smile that reached his eyes. "Did you wish for something good?" he asked. She nodded. "I think I already got it." In the days that followed, the house truly began to change. Jillian, after several tense conversations, quietly packed her things and left. There were no arguments, no shouting. Just the sound of suitcases rolling across the marble floor and the click of the front door closing behind her. Nathan didn't watch her leave. He was upstairs, helping Lila hang drawings on her bedroom wall. They had spent the afternoon painting. Her room soft lavender and cream. It smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. He let her choose where to place every frame. Each drawing had meaning. One showed the garden with birds and flowers. One showed a small house with stars above it. One showed a man holding a girl's hand as they walked under a tree. "You're really good at this," he said. Lila smiled shyly. "Mom used to draw with me," Nathan nodded. "She'd be proud." "I am too." Some nights, Nathan would sit beside Lila as she read aloud from her favorite storybook. He didn't always understand the characters or the fantasy names, but he listened carefully, nodding and laughing at all the right parts. Other times he would read to her, his voice soft and careful, learning to speak the words with meaning. On weekends, they would cook together. Flour ended up on the floor, syrup dripped across the table, and the cookies came out lumpy. But the laughter that filled the kitchen made it feel like magic. Clara noticed the difference. The girl who once walked like a shadow now skipped through the halls. The man who once only nodded now asked how her day was going and listened when she answered one evening, as autumn leaves began to fall. Nathan took Leela outside to the garden. They sat on the old bench beneath the tree Evelyn had once loved. The breeze carried the scent of soil and fading roses. "Do you remember when we sat here before?" he asked. She nodded, pulling her knees to her chest. "That day changed me," he said. "I thought I was doing enough. I thought giving you things would make you feel loved. But love isn't a gift you can buy. It's something you show." Every day Leela looked up at him. "You show me now?" He smiled and brushed a curl behind her ear. "And I always will." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun dip below the horizon. As night fell, the stars blinked into view, one by one. Leela leaned her head on her father's shoulder. Above them, the sky stretched wide and open, full of quiet beauty. "Do you know what Mom used to tell me?" she asked. "What's that?" she said. "Even in the darkest room, the light still lives in your heart." Nathan felt tears sting his eyes. She was right. "This house is different now," Lila whispered. "Yes," he replied, "because now, this is where the light lives." And under the stars, in the quiet garden, with nothing but the wind and the sound of leaves rustling, they stayed a little longer. Safe, seen together.